chapter 9. We concluded Proverbs 8, where wisdom is personified. Proverbs 9, she will be personified again. Proverbs 8 stands in stark contrast to the strange woman of Proverbs 7, and she's not strange because she wears funny clothes and has a weird look on her face. The strange woman of Proverbs 7 is the one who is the disallowed, the forbidden woman. The forbidden woman that's still going out and finding someone and claiming he's the man that she's wanting to see. Proverbs 8 contrasts wisdom with this, and wisdom is depicted as being in the high places of the city, at the top of the paths, calling for all those that go right on their way, pleading for souls to listen, saying that, "O ye simple, understand wisdom, ye fools be of an understanding heart. I'm going to speak of excellent things. The opening of a mouth shall be right things." And everything said about wisdom in Proverbs chapter 9 hinges on the idea that this is her conversation. This is her voice, her venue. This is her virtue. And these are what she endeavors to do. Then we spoke of her reputation, how she lives, what she loathes. We spoke of her motivation and ultimately her operation, how wisdom was utilized by God in creation and salvation. When we come to chapter 9, wisdom is personified again. And she's personified in contrast to folly. Proverbs 9:13, the King James Version has "the foolish woman is clamorous." It would be better translated as "folly is clamorous." We've mentioned before, the personification of ideas is not something foreign to our minds. In New York Harbor stands a statue. What do we call it? Call it the Statue of Liberty or Lady Liberty. Liberty personified. Wisdom is being personified. Folly is being personified. You go back to depictions of political cartoons, especially in the 19th and 20th centuries, and frequently there would be different ideas depicted as a man or a woman. Wisdom has built her house. She's hewn out her 7 pillars. Wisdom is made ready. We're going to divide this into 2 sections. We're not going to subdivide the sections. We'll just discuss them as we move through. First, find the fine woman of wisdom. That's the counsel being given. Look for her. Find her. She's built her house. She's hewn out her 7 pillars. Hewn out her 7 pillars. Just think of this as stability. And she's put the work into stability. Wisdom is industrious. Wisdom is stable. She is also forward-looking in that she hath killed her beasts. She put the work into that. She hath killed her beasts. She hath mingled her wine. She hath also furnished her table. What's wisdom doing if she's killing beasts, mingling in wine, and furnishing her table? She's preparing for what? She's preparing for a feast. She has a feast prepared and she is going to offer an invitation. Okay? So here's wisdom. She's killed her beasts. She's mingled her wine. She's furnished her table. She's also sent forth her maidens. Isn't it interesting that when Jesus gave the parable of the feast, the master would send forth his servants. Here, wisdom personified as a woman sends forth her maidens. She cries upon the highest places of the city. We discussed this back in chapter 8. This is wisdom positioning herself in the most visible, most recognizable, most high traffic points of the city. By sitting in that high place of the city, all that are walking uphill to where she is are going to see her from a distance. She's not hiding around a corner. She's not seeking through the alleys and whispering. Hers is an open invitation declared from the high points of the city. Whoso is simple, the word translated simple is a form of the Hebrew word pathi, and it carries the idea, we might put it as gullible, susceptible. The one who is easily influenced. Be careful with this word, and be careful with this person, because the one who is easily influenced is not necessarily evil, nor is the person who is easily influenced necessarily good. That's why wisdom is calling for the one that is easily influenced to fill that vacuum of void within himself or herself with that which is good. Whoso is simple, let him turn in hither. As for him that wanteth understanding. Proverbs 9:4. The word translated understanding is not a form of being or to being, as we've discussed. It's not the idea of the ability to see things from another's point of view. This is the one that lacketh lab. Elsewhere it's translated heart. We have discussed this word repeatedly. It's the idea of the center or core of a person. This is the person that lacks a core, that lacks a center, that lacks character. This is the one who doesn't know who he is. And that's a really good description for those that are easily swayed, highly susceptible to influence. Whoso is simple, let him turn in hither. And for the one that doesn't know who he is, that wanteth or lacketh understanding, that lacketh heart, that lacks a center, he's not decided who he's going to be, won't you come on in here and take a taste of my influence? She says to him, verse 5, come, eat of my bread, drink of the wine which I have mingled. She offers benefits. She offers that which is enjoyable. She offers that which is fulfilling. Eat of my bread, drink of my wine which I have mingled. Forsake the foolish and live. Verse 6. Let's look at this thought in two ways. First, the literal meaning is forsake those others who are simple. Jesus would put it this way in Matthew 15. When the blind lead the blind, both end up where? In the ditch. Well, when you have the simple, that is those who are highly gullible, easily susceptible. When you have the simple assembled with the simple, when you have those easily swayed in a crowd of the easily swayed, guess which direction they're all going to go? The path of least resistance. Forsake the simple and live. And live. What's meant by live? We'll get to that momentarily. Briefly described, forsake this life of high susceptibility and gullibility. Forsake this existence of not knowing who you are and not deciding what you're going to be, and actually experience life. Grasp what life is about. Live with direction. Live with intention. Live with purpose. Live with fulfillment. Forsake the foolish. The word translated foolish here is that word simple in verse 6. It's pathi. Forsake the simple and live. When the simple, forsake the simple, when the susceptible and gullible choose to leave the influence of other susceptible and gullible individuals, then the susceptible and gullible choose to leave susceptibility and gullibility. The simple is choosing to leave not only the crowd of the simple, but the characteristic of that simplicity. There's a realization that comes to mind in order to step out of that horde. That realization is my life has no direction. I don't know where I'm going. Generally speaking, as we study the book of Proverbs, this has strong moral implications. We've already noted those ideas as we worked our way through what we would call the overall introduction to the book of Proverbs, chapters 1 through 9. The moral application of wisdom repeated in various realms, whether it be our obtaining of material things or our obtaining of pleasure. There's a moral aspect to this. But we need to be careful lest we make the mistake of assuming that, well, because there's such a moral aspect to this, and that's talking about behave yourself, and I'm a faithful Christian, so I really don't have any foolishness to forsake, any simplicity to abandon. Brethren, there are times when churches are split right down the middle because the simple assembled with the simple, the gullible gathered with the gullible, and the easily influenced mobbed together with the easily influenced, instead of making a decision to grow, to learn, to leave that liberalistic path of least resistance, and to do better, be better, become better. Yes, there is still strong application for this, even among those that have abandoned the immorality that is so often the focus of Proverbs. But there's still some mentalities that can plague those who have left the immoralities. Forsake the foolish or the simple, the gullible, and live, and go in the way of understanding. Here, the word translated understanding is not lab, know who you are, have a core or a center. Now it is a form of that word being or to being. Go in the way of seeing things from multiple points of view. Go in the way of a mental discernment, literally a mental dividing. Go in the way where you can look at something from multiple points of view without blowing a gasket or having an aneurysm. Go in the way where you can think of other people's perspective, where you can step outside the box and look at a scenario and weigh multiple sides. That requires duct tape for some, because some people only have one thought before the gears of the mouth start moving. The practice of understanding requires thinking twice about a situation, because to see something from multiple perspectives means I entertain more than just one thought. So wisdom calls for the simple to abandon the simplicity, to go in the way of understanding. And wisdom gives a bit of advice. It would seem to be advice that's directly connected to what was just said in Proverbs 9:6. When wisdom says, forsake the foolish and live, get away from this group, get away from this type. You know, there's something else to be said here. Generally speaking, and we want to make sure that we say this in a non-derogatory way, what groups of people tend to be the most susceptible to influence? Particularly, what age brackets tend to be the most susceptible to influence? What'd you say? The young? The teens? There's a lot of application to be made here regarding the idea of, well, the mistake of just allowing the simple to gather with the simple with no guidance, with no direction. I thank God for the group of teens that we have here at Forest Hill. And I thank God for the efforts that their parents have put into influencing them to be the people they ought to be. Except for those Cane boys, they're just trouble. But I thank God for the teens that are here at Forest Hill. They didn't get that way by just being among themselves.
They didn't get that way without guidance and direction. And those that are up and coming will not get that way if the church puts everything on autopilot and just expects them naturally to become that way because the teens before them were that way. There's application to be made here when it comes to the mindset of parenting, when it comes to the mindset of growth and development. Forsake the foolish and live, go in the way of understanding. Now let's come to verse 7. He that reproveth a scorner getteth to himself shame. The word translated reprove connects with a word that can be instruct, correct. It's the concept of teaching. There's instructive discipline, there's corrective discipline. So you might think of it as he that tries to correct, but it could well just as easily be described as he that tries to teach any sort of lesson to or instruct. He that tries to give any teaching or any instruction to the scorner gets to himself shame. You ever had a conversation with someone that by the end of the conversation you realize that you would have borne more fruit had you gone and talked to a brick wall? Because at least the brick wall doesn't talk back. He that reproveth a scorner getteth to himself shame. The scorner is the one that is antagonistic. The scorner is the one that always has a retort, always has a comeback. The scorner is the one that does not listen to consider. Therefore, the scorner is not practicing understanding being to being. The scorner is the one, hey Christians, we need to get this. The scorner is the one that's only listening in order to have a comeback. The scorner is the one that is only listening in so much as he can have a response in order to prove the other person wrong or whatever the other person is saying. And it's a crying shame that there are people that have tried to defend the actual truth with the mindset of scorners. There are those that have thought that they could go out and win other scorners with the mentality of a scorner. An unstoppable force meets an immovable object. Nothing's going anywhere. He that reproveth a scorner getteth to himself shame. It does no good to reprove a scorner because all he's going to do is bite back and insult and give you a situation that is ultimately fruitless. He that rebuketh the wicked man getteth himself a blot. There's a close connection between this and Proverbs 26:4. Proverbs 26:4, answer not a fool according to his, lest what? Lest you be just like him. Lest thou also be like unto him. There are some fools whose positions and statements and beliefs, whose convictions and assertions ought not be answered because you're just wasting your breath. It's not going to do any good. Now, Proverbs 26:5, answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own conceits. There are some fools that need answered, not because they're going to listen, but because the foolishness of their position will be demonstrated to others who are listening. And then he gets a little taste of humiliation, and that might cause him to be quiet long enough for someone else to have just a little bit of respite. Yes, there are some fools that, because of that humiliation, might actually go back and reconsider. But Proverbs 26:4 and 5 require us to discern which kind of fool are we facing. Proverbs 9, 7 and 8 are discussing the one that he's not worth answering. He that reproves a scorner gets to himself shame. He that rebukes a wicked man gets to himself a blot. It's just going to be a stain on your very character. How many good people have you seen look like they were ill of temperament? You've seen their reputations sullied because they got into a prolonged conversation with a scorner that wouldn't listen. You've seen them look like they were the ones that were argumentative or dogmatic because they've allowed themselves to get caught up in rebuking the wicked who couldn't care less what the rebuke might be. He's just not going to accept any of them because how dare you try to prove me wrong? By the way, this sort of wickedness, this sort of scorning falls under the category of a particular type of foolishness. Proverbs 18:2, the fool hath no delight in understanding, but that his heart may discover itself. The fool just wants to spout his opinion. Or you connect with Proverbs 1:5, a wise man will increase learning. A man of understanding will attain to wise counsel. A man of understanding will keep learning. But Proverbs 1:7, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. Fools hate learning anything. For one thing, it impacts their pride. They have to admit there was something they didn't know. So, we come back to Proverbs 9:7 and 8. And wisdom, keep in mind it's wisdom speaking. This is wisdom inviting the gullible to her table so that they'll abandon gullibility. And wisdom tells the simple. Immediately after telling the simple to leave the other simple ones, don't turn around and rebuke them as you're leaving. It's not going to do any good. He that reproves a scorner gets to himself shame. He that rebukes a wicked man gets to himself a blot. Reprove not a scorner lest he hate thee. Don't waste your time. There's an application to be considered here for new Christians who get so caught up in trying to convince worldly friends that they found the right way, that those worldly friends refuse to listen, but they will use the already existing relationship as leverage to try to subdue and override the conviction of that new child of God. The call of wisdom sounds eerily reminiscent to God's call through Christ. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden. The call of wisdom sounds a lot like Christ's call when he said that he offered the bread of life, John 6. Here, wisdom calls those who will come to her to forsake the simplicity, the gullibility, and those that would hold to simplicity and gullibility. Reprove not a scorner, he's going to hate you. But you rebuke a wise man, Proverbs 9:8. How's he going to treat you? Reprove a wise man, what will he do? He's going to appreciate it. How many people like being told you're wrong? How many people wake up in the morning and think, oh man, what can I mess up today that somebody will need to correct me? It's not the way our minds work, is it? We don't like being wrong, and that's a matter of integrity. We don't like being wrong because we have within us a desire not only to be right, and some have it out of a sense of pride, I want to be right, but we also have a desire to be right so we can do right, so that we can share right and tell right. We have that desire, but too often we try to convince ourselves that we've met that desire with what we already know, instead of facing the fact that there might be more to learn. The wise are willing to learn more. You rebuke a wise man, he's going to love you. Now, from here, let's pause and make an application as it pertains to evangelism. Are there those in the world that just aren't going to listen? Are there those in the world that make it evident that they have no interest in learning the truth? Now, they wear different jerseys. Some play for the agnostics. Some wear the jersey of the atheist. Some are decked out in the uniform of the denominationalist. Some are wearing the uniform of the idolater. But whether you're talking about the atheist, the agnostic, the idolater, or the denominationalists, they're wearing the uniform that says, I'm not going to listen. Oh, there are those that are in those various areas that are willing to listen and consider. They have an objectivity and they're open-minded. Please don't misunderstand as though we're saying that anyone who's not a member of the church is of an unwilling mindset. That's not the case at all. But there are those among all four of those categories that just aren't going to listen. And you know what really hurts? The toughest part of it to face? When the one who's a scorner, when the one that refuses to listen is my son or daughter, is my husband or wife, it's my mom or dad, it's my brother or sister. Because we want to win those closest to us, right? Reprove not a scorner, lest he hate thee. It does no good. Jesus would employ similar concepts when he would warn his disciples, Matthew chapter 10, and if they don't receive you in this city, shake the dust from your feet. You might compare it with Matthew 7. Give not that which is holy to the dogs. Cast not your pearls before swine. In the context of Matthew 7, Jesus told those who would follow him that there is to be a level of discernment and where we're going to spend our efforts in trying to reach and to teach others, and to recognize when we're fighting a battle that can't be won. Oh, there's some that can't be won now. They might be able to be won later. But the point that wisdom is making in Proverbs 9, and a point that will be repeated by the master of wisdom in his ministry, is that yes, there are times we need to pick our battles. Prove a scorner, he's just going to hate thee. You rebuke a wise man, he'll love thee. Interesting thing about that. Here's a wise man that needs correction. Is it possible to be a wise man and get something wrong? Absolutely. You rebuke a wise man, he'll get wiser. Give instruction to a wise man, he'll get yet wiser. You teach a just man, he'll increase in learning. The wise are willing to learn. The wise are willing to say, I was wrong. In fact, the wise are willing to exercise this thing called understanding, the being to being, looking at things from multiple perspectives idea. The wise are willing to do that because they are always willing to admit, I could be wrong. But the Bible's right. The wise man is not the gullible man. He's not the easily influenced, susceptible individual. He's the one that when he experiences learning, he does so with objectivity, with a rational approach. So we don't want to make the mistake of overgeneralizing who the wise are, who the simple are, to the point that we merge identities. No. Wisdom is calling on the simple to leave their gullibility and to adopt a wisdom that's willing to learn, willing to continue learning and growing based on what's already been truly learned, demonstrated. Where do I start? If I'm being called out of simplicity and gullibility and susceptibility, where does it start? That's a great question. Wisdom answers that one too. Proverbs 9:10, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Right there's where it starts. With a humility, a reverence, and yes, a terror of Jehovah God. Not just a fear of deity, not a fear of some generic higher power, the fear of Jehovah God. The fear of the God of the Bible, a reverence for and relationship with God is the beginning of wisdom. And the knowledge of the holy is understanding. That's how the King James translates verse 10. The knowledge of the holy is understanding. It would be better translated, the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. Understanding, there's that word again, being or to being, seeing things from multiple perspectives. That's an interesting concept. We've discussed the fear of the Lord and its prominence and significance in the book of Proverbs. The knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. We've discussed this idea of understanding and seeing things from multiple points of view. But the knowledge of the Holy One, the knowledge of God, is understanding. You know why that is? Because when a soul comes to grasp an understanding of God, and that understanding, that knowledge of God is going to grow. That's how the Hebrews writer described it in Hebrews 5, when he said, by reason of use, they have their senses exercised to discern both good and evil. They've applied God's word to the point that his ways have become their ways. That knowledge of God is going to grow and it's going to develop. It's going to mature. When I come to have a knowledge of God, I'm no longer looking at life from my perspective. I look at situations from his. And when we train ourselves to look at life from not just my perspective, but from God's, it allows us to start stepping back, rethinking our assumptions, rethinking our spontaneous reactions, and start seeing things not just from our points of view, and not just from what's God's point of view, but also what's the point of view of this person that I'm trying to reach? What's the perspective of the individual I'm trying to teach? Because when we come to have a knowledge and understanding of God, we come to realize we don't know it all. We don't know a lot. Neither does the other person. What is it about his perspective that he might not be seeing that if I can identify with that, we can connect? So, Proverbs 9, verse 11. Wisdom says, for by me thy days shall be multiplied. What did it mean when wisdom said, forsake the foolish and live? Right here it is. For by me thy days shall be multiplied, the years of thy life shall be increased. Not just you're going to have a longer life, although statistically speaking, the more you employ wisdom, the better chance you have of living some more days. You'll take better care of yourself. You'll take less risks. You'll involve yourselves in less foolishness. You'll be less likely to say, hey, y'all, watch this. For by me thy days shall be multiplied, the years of thy life shall be increased. But it's not just a longer life in terms of duration. It's a fuller life. Because when we look at life from a perspective that is molded, guided, and instructed by God, we're able to see what really matters. We're able to appreciate what we really have. We're able to recognize more opportunities. We're able to change our ambitions and we don't spend our days chasing after the dollar. Verse 12, if thou be wise, thou shalt be wise for thyself. Wisdom says, I'm not calling you to be wise for my benefit. I'm calling you to learn wisdom and to practice wisdom for your benefit. It's going to make your life better. It's going to make it richer. But if thou scornest, thou alone shalt bear it. If you be the one that can't learn anything, that already knows it all, you'll pay for that one as well. What wisdom has to say in Proverbs 9 is not only for those that are of disreputable morality. There is very much an appeal from wisdom here that still applies to Christians today that may say themselves as faithful children of God, but they've become content in where they are. There's a summons here for growth, for maturity, and for continued learning. And we'll pick up here when we meet again next week. Thank you for your time tonight.